Hello, friends. This is Mark Powles, the host of Verity Seeker. I'm going to go through the Kansas ballot. The election is on Tuesday, November the 8th, 2022. And I do recommend that everyone go in and vote. Do not do early voting. Do not use the ballot boxes. You can do early voting if you have no other choice. For instance, my youngest daughter is off at college, but she will be voting in my district and has that ballot because she's only there temporarily. She is actually a resident in this district. That's one of the reasons why we have early voting, mail-in ballots, is for that purpose and that purpose only, and also military personnel. There is a reason for mail-in ballots, but we do not want to abuse that because it leads to fraud. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to get through the ballot. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I am going to go through the names and familiarize you with the front and back page of the ballot. And then last but not least, I'm going to go through the 2 constitutional amendments, which everyone will have to deal with. All right, here we go. All right, this is the front page of the ballot for my district. That would be Kansas House District 9 or U.S. House District 3, for example. Okay. Right here you have, these are national offices. Actually, it's the offices in the U.S. general government. It's the offices that serve the several states. Now, I don't like the word national because we are 50 sovereign independent countries. We call them states, but they're countries, and we are citizens of our countries, our states. We're not citizens of the national government. We're told that because the globalists and the nationalists want us to centralize all power to the center. They do not like the fact that the states retain all powers not enumerated in the U.S. Constitution. And they are continually and relentlessly trying to change or circumvent the constitutions, both in our states and the U.S. general government. Okay? Now, anyway, this is for the United States Senate. Now, people need to understand that the Senate, although it was changed so people would vote for the senator of representative of our state, the senator does not represent the people directly. The senator represents the entire state, as a country. The state of Kansas, the country of Kansas. That's what a senator does. They represent the state when it comes to the U.S. general government's duties based on the Constitution. And those duties are very limited, although you would never know it because that government is running out of control. It is operating completely unconstitutionally. So most of what it does is void, and the states need to stand up and nullify so much. Okay, but anyway, you have David Graham, Libertarian from Overland Park, Mark Holland, the Democrat, and Jerry Moran, the incumbent Republican, the one that's been serving the state of Kansas. Now, if you do not want any of these people, you need to consider writing someone else's name in there. Do not vote for anyone that you do not believe is qualified or has served you incorrectly. Okay? That's what the write-in vote is for. Okay? Use the power you have to send a message. Okay, then we have the United States House of Representatives. And here, pertaining to the U.S. House, they represent the 3rd District of Kansas. I'm in the 3rd District. And we have Sharice Davids, who's the Democrat that's serving in there now. We have Amanda Adkins that the Republican establishment has picked for us out of Overland Park. And then we have Stephen Hoey, which is, he's from Shawnee, and he is the Libertarian. Now, I have spoken at great length with Stephen Hoey because I know a lot about these other two candidates. This guy's extremely qualified, but that's just my opinion. This here is your option. If you don't like any of the options up here, you need to put a write in. Find somebody that you know, anyone, and write their name in. Exercise your authority or your displeasure. We do not have to pick the people that have been picked for us, and it's time we start doing that. Now, there are good people on this ballot. I know because I have, I've studied this very carefully. Okay, now then we get to the state offices. And I tell you, it's more important to get your state representatives. You need to make sure your state government is a good one, clean, no corruption, no, the Republicans use the term rhino, R-I-N-O. They're Republicans in name only. And Democrats rarely have anyone moving into their realm that is working as a conservative. It's very rare, but you will find in the Republican Party a kind of leftist neoconservative element, kind of a radical Republican that's not really conservative, but they often work with the Democrat Party to continue the agenda and the direction that our state and our U.S. general government are heading in. So they're not really Republicans. They're not really operating as what the Republican platform expects. Okay, so anyway, this is very important to make sure that you vote correctly here in Kansas. Now, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but we're going to go down the line here. This is for governor. Okay, it says it right here. And unfortunately, we kind of do it the same way the U.S. general government does now. We elect the governor along with the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor is the person that's kind of the right-hand man or woman that works with the governor and kind of like a vice president, except, maybe a little more important. They will help the governor with duties in the executive branch. And the lieutenant governor will also take the place of the governor if something happens to the governor. Okay, so that's really an important position. Okay, Seth Cordell, Evan Gaines, Libertarian Party. Okay, there's nothing wrong with these fellas. Okay, Laura Kelly is the incumbent with David Toland. Okay, they're in there now. If you don't like the way things went in 2020, 2021, and 2022, then you probably want to get rid of this person. Not telling you to, I'm just saying that if you were against all that, then you might want to look elsewhere. Then you have Dennis Pyle and Kathleen Garrison. Independent, okay, very conservative, Dennis Pyle is serving in the Senate now and has done a very good job. Derek Schmidt and Katie Sawyer is the Republican. Now, Derek Schmidt was the Kansas Attorney General for quite a while, and throughout the Laura Kelly governorship. And so if the Attorney General really can help stop a lot of unconstitutional overreach in the executive branch if they want to. So that's something to consider. Derek Schmidt was the AG in 2020, 2021, and 2022, and now he's running for governor as a Republican. Again, if you don't like any of the selections here, then write somebody's name in that you think will do a better job, okay, or do less damage. Okay, 4, Secretary of State. Okay, right now Scott Schwab is the Secretary of State. Okay, and they take care of elections and things like that. And now Scott Schwab doesn't think that there was any fraud in Kansas, and I do disagree with that. But I mean, if you think that all of our elections have been fair and there hasn't been any fraud or manipulation in the machines, keep him in there. Otherwise, you might want to look elsewhere. Okay, Lang is the Libertarian from Paola. Repass is the Democrat from Overland Park. And again, the incumbent, the one who has been serving, is Schwab. Okay, if you don't like any of your choices, write somebody's name in there. You don't have to vote for the lesser of, 2 evils, 3 evils, or 4 evils, whatever. If you don't agree with the selection, write your own in there. That's what it's there for. There's a reason why it's there. Okay, now the Attorney General. This is the position that Derek Schmidt, who now wants to be your governor, has been serving in. And your candidates are Chris Kobach, Republican. By the way, he does know the Constitution and he does support it, and he does understand a few things about the proper relationship between the states and the general government, the federal government. And then you have Chris Mann, the Democrat. Okay, if you don't like either, use the write-in. Okay, then for state treasurer, we have Stephen Johnson. He was the Republican that barely beat Karen Tyson, who was running for that same position for the state of Kansas. Karen Tyson is in the Senate now and has done an excellent job there. But Stephen Johnson pulled through. And Steve Roberts is the Libertarian from Overland Park. And then you have the incumbent working under Kelly, Lynn Rogers out of Wichita. If you don't like, what's been going on with unemployment and whatever, and if capers and, your retirement plan, if you're working for the state, you might want to consider a change. But if you think things have been going well with the unemployment and all that kind of stuff, throughout 2020 and 2021 and so on, then keep him in there. If you don't like any of the choices, you have the write-in. Then you go over to the third column. You have the state offices continuing for Commissioner of Insurance. Now, if we have a problem with our insurance regulation here in the state of Kansas, okay, premiums are changing, your coverage is changing. Is it getting any better? Is it getting any worse? What is the climate like as it pertains to insurance? You might want to take a look here and make a decision on that. Now, if you don't know much about these people, if you're a college student and you're just trying to get through college and you haven't been keeping up, that we can't solve that overnight. So what you might want to do is you might want to contact me personally. You can do it on Facebook messaging and say, hey, I need some advice. I won't do this on this podcast, though. I'll be very, very much thorough and will express my direct opinions and perspective on all of these candidates if people contact me personally on social media. Not publicly, personally, because I just don't believe it's not appropriate for me to tell people how to vote on this podcast here. I want to go through the ballot. Okay, this is for Commissioner of Insurance. Vote for the person you think is going to fix problems. Okay, and I think Vicki Schmidt is the one that's serving. I haven't really been paying much attention to that, but you have Corcoran as the Democrat. Again, If you know somebody that's a little more savvy in this area, put a write-in in there. It's better to do that than to vote for somebody you know nothing about. That's my opinion. You could even write some friend of yours in there. It doesn't matter. The person doesn't even need to be qualified. If you can't make a decision, find somebody with good character and is honest. I mean, exercise your power. Don't just settle for what they give you. Okay, for Kansas House of Representatives, I'm in the 9th District for the House of Representatives here in Kansas, and this is who we have, Elena Cloutier. I'm not sure of the pronunciation. There's going to be a couple kinds of pronunciations for that depending on your understanding of the languages. She's the Democrat. My understanding from the mailer that I received, the Kansas National Educators Association, the teachers union, supports her greatly because she's going to, support the union's interests in our public schools. Fred Gardner is a Republican. He's running for that office, and he was a former veterinarian, and he just a laid-back guy, very much rural America, pretty nice guy. But anyway, you have to decide there. He has served on a board of education before. I don't know how good of a job he did, but he did have that experience. I did do a podcast with him, and if you want to find out more about him, you can check out my podcast on Rumble or YouTube under Verity Seeker. Okay, and find out about that. Okay, now these people are your direct representative if you're in my district. Another district will have different names here. Okay, but these people are important. They're your direct representatives. Okay, then we go to the State Board of Education. Now, please understand, in the Constitution, the State Board of Education is not the dictator of your school. It's up to the local school. If there's another problem like 2020, it's up to the local school board to decide whether to close the school or not. Okay, anyway, you just have Jim Porter. Now, he's from Fredonia. He's a Republican. Now, I do have an opinion, and I want to express it, but I'm not going to. I hate the fact that people aren't contested, and I wish the person that ran against him in the Republican primary, I wish he had been an independent, so we could have a name in here. But again, if you don't want Jim Porter, then write somebody's name in. If you've got a candidate out there that needs to be in here that can better represent you, then write that name in there. Okay. Now here are the nonpartisan. If you have a city commission or a council, same thing. This is where it'll be. Now for me, we've got Troy Armstrong, Garnett, Mark Locke, Justin Thompson. I was going to interview these guys, but I've decided on my Verity Seeker podcast, I decided not to. I'm going to remain neutral because it's right here in my home community. Again, if you can go on these people's Facebook page and see for yourself kind of what they're like on a social realm. And or you can call them up and talk to them or send them a private message and ask a question. That's probably the best way to do it. And if you don't like what they stand for, or if you feel like they don't have enough knowledge to be able to serve the city very well, then write somebody's name in there that can do the job, that somebody that will protect the people's rights and their right to property and so on. Okay. So that's the front page. Then we have the back page. Now this is where it gets interesting because nobody, and I mean nobody, gets information on justices. Okay, the very first one here is, now this is state, okay? This is state justices and appeals courts. Okay, it says here Supreme Court for Justice. Now, we're not talking about the Supreme Court of the United States, the general government. We're talking about the Kansas Supreme Court. It's really the only court we need in the American Union. Our state courts can handle everything, with the exception of, disagreements between state and citizens from another state, or from state to state, or foreign matters. That's really what the U.S. Supreme Court is supposed to be doing. They really aren't supposed to be dealing with state issues. Okay, we have. Okay, and we don't elect these people. We can either, when their term is up, we can only vote to remove them or to retain them. Okay? So say, for instance, you're a pro-lifer. Okay. And, we have the 2015 statutes on the books, which are, in my research, they are pursuant to Declaration 1 of our Kansas Constitution. Okay, you can't get around that. They are pursuant. So the statutes that are in place to restrict the institutions that make profit from aborting babies and the unborn, performing abortions, protects the statutes that are on the books at this time. They do protect the unborn, the right to a life. Okay? And that was the whole purpose of the restrictions. I've read them. They're not outrageous. They are necessary, and they still exist to this day. It's up to the legislature, the Kansas legislature, to know that a Supreme Court justice cannot rule over the legislature, nor can it legislate. A Supreme Court cannot create law. Okay? So if you're a pro-lifer, and in 2019, the Kansas Supreme Court submitted an opinion on certain statutes restricting abortion in the state of Kansas. Okay? And 6 of the 7 justices ruled that it was unconstitutional. I don't want to get into the details, but they ruled, and they made up a constitutional justification for it. They mixed a bunch of stuff together and came up with their own concoction. And there was really only one declaration in the Constitution that mattered, and that was the first one, the one that protect life for all people, all humans. And really, it's broad. It really doesn't matter at what stage in a human's life that life is protected. Okay, the right to that life is protected. Okay, so these restrictions were valid. Now, when a Supreme Court presented an opinion 6 saying it was unconstitutional, the statutes, and 1 that actually did say that it was pursuant to the U.S. Constitution via the first declaration in the Bill of Rights, he was the only justice that nailed it. That's the person you should retain if protecting all human life, the right to all human life, I should say. The government doesn't have a right to protect your life. They have the duty to protect your right to it. Okay. Out of all of these, now some of these I don't know very well, so I can't really say much about it. But if they were in the Supreme Court, Kansas Supreme Court, when the 2019 opinion was presented, none of these people should be retained except for Caleb Stegall from Lawrence, Kansas. That would be position number 7. And I would say, yes, this man should be retained forever. He was the only one that actually used a real valid constitutional basis supporting the 2015 statutes that are on the books, that are still on the books. They still have the force of law because they are pursuant to exactly what he said. They were pursuant to the first declaration of the Kansas Bill of Rights. And you can look it up, read it for yourself. Okay, then you come over here and we have the Court of Appeals, the Appeals Court. This is an area that I just haven't had time to study, but what you need to do is, if you want to retain this person, select yes, and make sure you darken it in cleanly. This guy here, Green Jr., yes or no? Do you want to retain him? Tom Malone, do you want to retain him? Yes or no? Hurst, yes or no? Okay. You can look these names up online and you can actually see some of their so-called opinions on certain court cases. So if you're really into the pro-life subject, and that's something you know a lot about, you can kind of find out what they believe and what they support. Make your judgment. I cannot make the judgment for you there. I'm going to have to make my own judgment. Okay. And if you want to talk to me privately to ask any questions, I will give you my direct opinion. Okay. Now, these are all important, but there's something else coming. We have 2 constitutional amendments. The first one here deals with bureaucratic, unelected officers and agencies within the executive branch who create the rules and regulations that really, from time to time, are restrictive to your direct representatives in the legislature. Now, the legislature, your direct representatives are supposed to be the most powerful branch of your Kansas government and the most important because they are your direct representatives. They represent the power of the people against an oppressive, ever-expanding, expensive government. Okay? Well, that's what this is all about right here. Now, I was very skeptical at first because I'm always skeptical of any constitutional amendment because I'm aware that there's always somebody with an agenda or self-interest trying to trick the people into changing the Constitution to benefit something or themselves or some agenda that they're attempting to achieve. It's important for them to get that power. Now, this is not one of those cases. The purpose of this amendment is to provide the legislature with oversight of state executive branch agencies and officials by providing the legislature authority to establish procedures to revoke or suspend rules and regulations. A vote for this proposition would allow the legislature to establish procedures to revoke or suspend rules and regulations that are adopted by state executive branch agencies and officials that have the force and effect of law. Okay, a vote against it means no change. Everything remains the same. Okay? So what this means is that you are making sure that the legislature, the people you actually elect to represent you in the state of Kansas, has the power to overturn regulations and rules that are coming from unelected bureaucrats from within the executive branch. Who do you want to have that power? People you don't know or people you elect in the legislature who have the power to create law? You do not want a deep state, which is what we have. we have a deep state in Kansas government, and that's why we're going in the wrong direction. Okay. Now it says here, legislative oversight of administrative rules and regulations. That's what it's called. Whenever the legislature, by law, has authorized any officer or agency within the executive branch or government to adopt rules and regulations that have the force and effect of law, the legislature may provide by law for the revocation or suspension of any such rule and regulation, or any portion thereof, upon a vote of a majority of the members then elected or appointed and qualified in each house. For me, this would be a vote of yes. There's nothing wrong with this, constitutionally speaking. The power is being placed where it should be. Okay. I do believe that it's always been there, with or without this constitutional amendment. It's just that they just don't know that they have the power. But by putting it in the Constitution, it's there. No one can dispute it. Now, here's the other one. This is extremely important. Okay, this is a constitutional amendment to put the election of your county sheriff in the Constitution. Now, that sounds great, but let me put it this way. The power is in the people, historically and traditionally, in the state of Kansas to elect their own sheriff. Now, their sheriff has the power to protect the people from federal infringements and state infringements. You can't ask for anything more powerful than a constitutional sheriff. Now, you need to elect a constitutional sheriff. Sometimes a lot of times they're not constitutional at all, and they think they're law enforcement officers. Now, why do you need people like that when you have city police officers? You know, they don't have to swear an oath to a constitution. They serve the government. A sheriff serves the Constitution and the people. They stand between the federal government and the people, or the state government and the people, and they have that power to protect the people, the rights of the people. It says here, this is actually all of this came from constitutional sheriffs associations. To keep the peace and to secure, defend, and protect the people of this jurisdiction from threats to their liberties, their livelihoods, and the peaceable enjoyment of their property. The nature of that solemn oath requires that the actions of the sheriff in the performance of his or her duty must conform to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state. Okay? So their duty is to protect the people and their natural rights per state constitutions and the Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution. And they do have the power to protect the people from any level of government. There is no level of government above your local sheriff. Okay. Now it says here, here's the explanatory statement. This amendment would preserve the right of citizens of each county that elected a county sheriff as of January 11th, 2022, to continue electing the county sheriff. The amendment would also provide that a county sheriff only may be involuntarily removed from the office pursuant to either a recall election. Okay, now that's the way it's done by the people. The people elect the sheriff. The people can recall an elected sheriff. But here's the kicker. Or a writ of quo warranto initiated by the Attorney General. Now, the elected sheriff by the people, the only authority over your elected sheriff is who? The people of your county. It was never intended that there would be a government agency of any level for any reason above your elected sheriff. The only authority over your elected county sheriff would be you and me, the people. Okay? The people can already recall an elected sheriff. The people have the sole authority and power over the elected sheriff, and that's why the elected sheriff, county sheriff, is an amazing tool that's designed specifically to protect the rights of the people from infringement, and we don't want to change that. Okay? Now, this all sounds good, but people aren't going to think about that. So you're basically putting your county sheriff back into government oversight and control. So why bother having a county sheriff? Now, they'll tell you it's no big deal, and the writ of quo warranto, they're just talking about qualifications, if you have a bad sheriff. I'm sorry, that's really up to the people, don't you think? Okay, a vote for this proposition would preserve the right of citizens of each county that elected a county sheriff as of January 11th, 2022 to continue. Don't we already have that right? To continue electing the county sheriff via popular vote. Don't we already have that right? But here it is. The amendment would also direct that a county sheriff only may be involuntarily removed from office pursuant to either a recall election, which we already can do, or a writ of quo warranto. That, again, that's it. Initiated by the Attorney General of the state of Kansas. So what have you done if you agree to this? You've taken your power and moved it to your government. A vote against this proposition would not make any changes to the Constitution and would retain current law concerning the election of a sheriff and the procedures for involuntary removal of a sheriff from office. Okay? So, you just have to think about with these, what are they trying to do here? They're trying to take your authority over your sheriff, who is about the only protection between you and an overreaching, powerful federal or state government. I just can't imagine. I don't know what these people were thinking. Either they know what they're doing and are trying to trick the people, or they just didn't think through it. Okay? And anyway, there's more explanation here, but I've given it to you. I'm going to go down here, removal of officers, just to kind of reiterate. A, except as provided in subsection B, all county and township officers may be removed from office in such manner and for such cause as shall be prescribed by law. Okay. B, a county sheriff only may be involuntarily removed from office by recall election pursuant to Section 3 of Article 4 of this Constitution, or a writ of quo warranto initiated by the Attorney General. Now, to kind of help out a little bit, this is actually some definitions that I looked up of quo warranto. Okay? A legal proceeding during which an individual's right to hold an office or governmental privilege is challenged. If you get the wrong attorney general in the state of Kansas, what do you think is going to happen to your sheriff who's trying to protect you from unconstitutional mandates or draconian reactions to situations in the state of Kansas? Okay? They'll come up with all kinds of reasons to get rid of your sheriff because he or she is standing in the way. Okay? Think about that. All right. In some quo warranto proceedings, the issue whether the defendant is entitled to hold the office he or she claims or to exercise the authority he or she presumes to have from the government. In addition, proceedings have challenged the right to the position of county commissioner, treasurer, school board member, district attorney, judge, or tax commissioner. In certain jurisdictions, quo warranto is a proper proceeding to challenge individuals who are acting as officers or directors of business corporations. Now, this would be the sheriff, not a business corporation. Okay. Statutes describing quo warranto usually indicate where it is appropriate. Ordinarily, it is proper to try the issue of whether a public office or authority is being abused. For example, it might be used to challenge the unauthorized practice of a profession, such as law or medicine. In such situations, the challenge is an assertion that the defendant is not qualified to hold the position she or he claims. Okay, now, do you want a government institution or government department like the Attorney General to have that authority over your elected county sheriff? I don't think so. I mean, it's up to you. You have to vote, not me. I'm voting no on this one. I'm voting yes on this one because it's actually going to keep power near the people and their direct representatives. Over here, they are stealing. They are going to steal power from you in a big way and your directly elected sheriff, county sheriff, hopefully a constitutional county sheriff, away from you and your sheriff and placing it in the department or the office of Attorney General. Ultimately, they're going to abuse this. They will say that they will not abuse it, but they will abuse it eventually. That's the way it always happens. Now, I believe it's the right of any county, which is the way it is now. If a county wants an elected constitutional sheriff, then they should have the power and the right to elect their own sheriff. If they do not want a sheriff in their county, then let them suffer the consequences. Down the road, they will suffer the consequences because a federal mandate will come down the pike, and those people will be at the mercy of who? Themselves, to try to protect themselves. They have no protection. They have no sheriff with the power and authority to stop mandates like this. Okay? This is exactly what you don't want to do. So there are some counties in the state of Kansas that have done away with the office of sheriff in their county. They can reinstate it anytime they want and become, and have their sheriff, but they can do that anyway. Okay? This amendment here is not something that I can subscribe to. Okay? All right. Well, that's all I have for you. I'm sorry this went a little long, but these things need to be explained, especially the constitutional amendments. And if you want a personal description of the people that are on the ballot, or at least in my districts, you can private message me on Facebook. That's the only way I'll do it. And I will share my perspective with the candidates. I will tell you this, that I'm voting principle over party. I am not, I'm registered Republican, but I'm voting independent. I'm voting libertarian. I'm writing in names, and I'm voting Republican. I'm doing the whole gamut, and I'm not thinking about the party. I'm thinking about the individual and what they have proven to me they will do or not do. So that's how everyone needs to vote. Stop voting tribal. Okay? You're being forced into a two-party box. And because of that, we are in the situation that we're in today. Things aren't going so well. And why do you think that is? It's because Democrats vote Democrat, Republicans vote Republican tribe, no matter what. And nobody's looking at the independent, and nobody's looking at the libertarian. Well, some are. But I think you need to look at the independents and the libertarians this time, because they want to fix the problem. Okay? So that's all I have for you today. This is Verity Seeker, and I'm your host, Mark Paus. Thank you for listening.